So we've all watched the news. How many years have we been watching the news? And you see things happening all over the world, whether it's war or the tornadoes that just went through, or floods, or the things that happen in the world. And we watch it from afar, and we can feel that compassion. We feel the intensity. We feel that awareness of the life-changingness of each of those events. And so when it happens to us in our lives, it isn't until you touch it and taste it for yourself can you really understand. And so last Thursday, 2 weeks ago Thursday, I was recovering from COVID, and I had finally had some strength to go out and work in my studio, in my workspace. And my mom called me, and she said, "The sky is starting to change. What do you think?" And I looked outside, and sure enough, not only was it changing, but ash was coming down. And she said, "I think I'm going to start to pack up." And I thought, really? We live in a town where there's been summers of intense smoke, intense disaster. It seemed like someplace else. And she said, "No, this feels different to me. I'm going to start to pack up." And so I quit doing what I was doing, and I looked out, and my neighbor was spraying down our house and spraying water into my backyard. And I went, and Rich was working in the garage, and we started talking about that this looked serious. We went outside, and the wind was blowing. And it was one of those moments, I think, that I knew that it would be different from here on out. And I think about the movies that we watch, like Outlander or other shows where you touch a stone and it changes, and forever you're in a new world. And I think of the people that are in situations where there's been a tornado or a flood or a war, and you have touched that stone to a new reality. And so we started taking it very seriously and started packing up, and my mom and I are on the phone with each other, and I still have COVID, and so we get the evacuation notice, and we decide we'll meet at King Soopers in Louisville and figure out what we're going to do, because we were going to come to the church, but the church didn't have power, which also meant that there was something serious happening. And we went our separate ways. I went to somebody else's house who had COVID, and she went to a close friend, and we turned on the news, and along with 30,000 other people who were evacuated, we watched. We watched the impossible. Four months ago, my mom and I were walking through the neighborhood of her house. She lives up by Harper Lake. And we were noticing the people who were putting beautiful additions onto their homes, or doing these beautiful things to these really gorgeous homes up by Harper Lake. And she said, "I've been meaning to tell you something. I know as an only child you count on this house as your inheritance. And what is mine is yours. I just want to tell you, you can't count on anything. That life is impermanent. That you can't count on anything." And when she said that, and I'm looking at this big, beautiful house in this established neighborhood, I thought, really? You can't count on that? Because that's pretty solid. And she said, "You just never know what's going to happen. There could be a natural disaster," she said. "There could be, the market could fall. We don't know what's going to happen. What's mine is yours, but just don't count on it." So I think about how when she called me and she said, "Something's happening," she knew better than I did that life is impermanent. And she was one of the lucky ones. She was able to gather some very important things. Not the 75 years of things that she had gathered through all of her travels, not her entire art studio, but her most precious things. And there are many who did not even have that chance. There are many who weren't home. There were many who the fire was coming too quickly. And as we watched that night, 30,000 of us, not knowing what was happening, looking at the news, looking, is this my neighborhood, is that my neighborhood, in fear, every single one of us had that same experience. My mom drove back from Boulder. She snaked her way in, and she watched her neighborhood burn. My mom is a lifelong Buddhist. She's been a Buddhist for 50 years. And she stood on the Ganges and has watched the cremations of bodies. And she said that she witnessed the cremation of her life. It's a profound moment, whether it's this loss, and we all have loss in our life, and there's so many levels of it. Grief is the word for loss and transition, and it is not a strong enough word. Grief, like love, is this one word that expands so much. You can't say, I love this bottle of water, which I love and appreciate, the same way that I love my child. To grieve the loss of a home is different to grieve the loss of a spouse, or a child, or a pet, or a career, or a dream. And so when we talk about grief today, we're really talking about this collective grief that we're feeling as a community. But we all experience grief in our lives. And I think the amazing thing, the experience that I've had, is having this mother who is practicing her Buddhist beliefs of impermanence and the ability to look and be with what is, and to be in the pain, and to be in the unknown, and to have this strength in her faith and her foundation that it's going to be okay. And so it's interesting that I was to talk today. I always think it's not synchronicity, it's God. Because this is personal to me. And every single one of us, whether you lost a home, we had 4 families within Columbine that we know of that lost their homes. Aria Martin Ward is one of our members who came in the last year. She and her sons barely escaped with their 2 dogs and not much else. My mom, Linda. The Kinders, who haven't been here for a while but are still part of our community. Same with the Roaches. And if there was anybody else who's been a visitor that we don't know your names, we want to know who you are so that we can hold you as you walk through this. We have families here whose homes were not damaged, but weren't burned down, but have extensive smoke damage. And they are displaced. And even those who didn't have any damage but had that trauma of that night, of the stories that I've heard of people driving through fire in the medians, trying to get out, the not knowing, that stress that you had. Some part of us sometimes, with our home still standing, we wonder, why us? You drive through those neighborhoods, there's one house that is burned next to another one that isn't. Why is that? We want to make sense of it, and the truth is we can't make sense of it. We don't have control over that. We want to think that there's some bigger plan. Maybe I deserved it. Maybe this person prayed harder. I personally think that life is wild and unpredictable and messy, and we just don't know. And as I drive around and I see how many lucky neighborhoods the burn came right up to the edge, and the intensity of everything that's happening. And I think about all those other countries, all those other states, all those other neighborhoods that end up going through the same thing. And we've already gone past the news cycle on the national level. But we won't be out of this for a long time. They're saying 5 years until we rebuild. So what does that mean? That means that now we are in the process of healing. Now we're in the process of grief. And as I started thinking about this talk, I thought, we don't talk about grief enough. Grief isn't just the death of a loved one. Like I said, grief encompasses so much of our lives. And as I was talking to my brother-in-law last night about this, he said, I'm still grieving. I'm still grieving the loss of my mother, the loss of my marriage, the loss of my job. But we don't often say to somebody, how are you doing? And they respond with, I'm grieving. But we do, we grieve for so much. And I had a friend who said, grief will lead the way. And one of my friends that lost her home, Kathy, she's been posting on Facebook. She's one of the ones that left with nothing. A toothbrush and a pair of pajamas in a house that she'd lived in for 30 years. And her Facebook post said, I know this. Falling apart is part of the process of coming together again. I will continue to be right where I am, devastated, sad, overwhelmed, confused, flooded, drained, until I'm not there anymore. But where I am is a fine place to be. And when I think of that, what I see and what I think is that we each sometimes can get caught up in, I didn't lose my home, so I shouldn't feel bad. I should feel lucky. I did lose my home, but somebody else has it worse. Somebody else didn't have insurance where I had insurance. Somebody lost a pet when I didn't lose a pet. But the truth is, we each have our own grieving process. And although there was the 5 stages of grief was laid out, the woman who wrote it, her name was Kubler-Ross, later said, I didn't mean that those were the exact ways that it worked. What I meant was these are examples of how we can feel, how we can go through it. There isn't a linear path that says this is grieving, and you will have this, and then you will have this, and then you'll have this, and then you'll get to acceptance. It's twisty, it's turny, it backs on itself. There are days where you're okay, and there's days where you can't move. So you must allow yourself to have grief have its way with you, because it is the next step to healing. When we push it down, we can't move forward. So how do we do that? How do we come to a place where we can trust and know? And these are the times, when life is really hard, when we are devastated, that we can forget to lean into our spiritual path. It seems easier when everything's going wonderful for you. Sometimes Scott says everything's working out for your highest good, for its highest good, and you think to yourself, what is the highest good in this? Where is God in this? And I get it. What I feel, that I know, is that this plane, this human, earthly plane that we're on, doesn't mean that there won't be hard times. Sometimes we think that hard is bad. Hard isn't bad, it's just hard, and life is hard. But we do have this other world, the real, true world of God, of Spirit, that is right here with us too. The one that you can lean on in times like this. And it doesn't mean that it's going to soften it right away. It doesn't put a Band-Aid on it and then it's healed immediately. It's the gentleness. It's the knowing that you can make it to the other side. It's the awareness that even through the tough times, even through the hard times, God is there with you. In unity, we say the first unity principle is God is good. Everything is good. And then we say people are good. And then we say our thoughts are powerful. And then we say you can connect through prayer and meditation to that oneness. And then we say walk the walk. Those are the 5 unity principles. So now is the time to let grief lead the way. And in that, to allow yourself to come into a place where you really lean on your higher power. With Martin Luther King, it's birthday on Monday, or celebrating it, I love that his quote is, "Faith is taking the next step even when you don't see the whole staircase." And for many of us that are going through this process of having lost a home, over 1,000 structures, yeah, that staircase is long. That staircase is long. But when we're in our connection with God, when we're in our connection with Spirit, we don't have to know the answers. We just have to trust and have faith that we're being led in the right direction, that everything's working out for us. And when I was talking to Aria, it was beautiful how she was saying, the next right thing is happening for me. I'm being blessed with the goodness that's happening for me. Which doesn't mean that there isn't heartache. I know my mom says that she has these moments where she had everything. And she'll think, oh, I just need a little hook for my new apartment to hang something. And then she heaves with that loss of, I had everything. And it's important to be in that moment. To allow yourself to grieve, to allow yourself to feel in your time and in your way. And to breathe it through. And come back to the place that says, I know that I am held in the light and the love of God. There's been an outpouring, just this incredible outpouring of love, and it's phenomenal. You know, we were in between that week, the church takes a week off. And so Thursday was when the fire happened, and when we reconvened the next week, we were already trying to figure out how we could be of service because there was so much that was already set up. People really have compassion. And when we're in our little houses and we're doing our own little things, it can be hard to remember that we are all a community together. This is my mom and Rich. Last Sunday. Ooh, that's hard to look at. Part of grieving is allowing love. Part of grieving is accepting help. Part of grieving is asking for help. And that we don't have to be okay all the time. That we don't have to feel like we ourselves are the strength. What I have found in my spiritual life is the more that I lean into that knowing that I'm held and protected and loved by my higher power, by my understanding of God, whatever that is for you, there's a strength that comes, a knowing that I can walk through this, that the pain will not kill me, that I have something to learn and something to grow and something to come out the other side. We've touched a stone and moved into a new life and a new awareness that is different than it would have ever been before. We can never get our structures back. And there's a real loss in that. But if we're willing to step into the depth of our emotions, our grief, our faith, our connections with each other, our willingness to see to the other side, our willingness to trust and believe and know that there is a life on the other side, it won't be the same. My mom said, I'm not going to try to recreate the life that I had. It's gone. She watched it in a cremation. But there's a new, expansive, incredible life that I know is waiting for me, she said. And it's going to take time. And we as a community, we're here for you. Columbine is such an incredible place that allows people to be exactly who they are, exactly where they're at. We're here to support you, but we will never tell you who to be or how to feel or how to have faith, how to love, how to grieve. But we want to support you and love you and let you know that we're here for you. We have these incredible prayer chaplains. We have incredible ministers that really are here to offer you spiritual support. I'm here in whatever way that I can to help you at Columbine. Janice is working on outreach for us to try to figure out how to help the larger community. We need to be here for each other for the next, not just 5 years, but for our lifetimes. And I invite you to take this time of grief and deepen your spiritual practice for whatever that is for you. I know for me that my mornings of meditation and spiritual reading are the foundation of what keeps me strong. But everyone has a different way of being. But I encourage you to embrace your spiritual path, to let grief lead the way, to know that you don't have to be or do anything other than be yourself. There is another side. The staircase is there for you. I just hold each of you in my hearts, whether you're grieving from the fire or you're grieving from other loss. Allow ourselves to grieve. Let's talk about grieving more, loss and transition. I have so much more compassion for others who have been through this kind of situation, and it is unfortunate that you have to go through it to really understand it. But we are here together. We're here together. So please reach out if you need help. We love you, we bless you, and we allow you to be on your path and your way. Come on up. Janice, I have actually, my last line is, Janice is going to sing an amazing song she wrote, and like Phoenix from the ashes, we will rise again. Janice, of course, wrote this song last minute. It's incredible.
Well, this is actually, I have to send a shout out to Aria as well. Just being moved by the things that I've been seeing her post about something good coming out of this. So we're sending this out to the community. we join together our hearts and hands, I know that we can find the light, and we will rise like the phoenix from the ashes, rise like the eagle on its wing, rise like the spirit as it dances, rise like the soul when it sings, rise like the phoenix from the ashes, rise like the eagle on its wing, rise like the spirit as it dances, rise like the soul. Let's break it down, y'all. Rise like the phoenix from the ashes, rise like the eagle on its wing, rise like the spirit as it dances, rise like the soul when it sings, rise again. We're gonna rise again, 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 rise again, rise again. We love you. Thank you.